Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We are here with Elizabeth Sjoblom from Lactation Partners in Chicago, and she is going to share some of her insight on the new guidelines from the American Academy of Pediatrics and how this could affect breastfeeding families. So thank you for joining us today, Elizabeth.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So let's maybe look at this from a chronological standpoint. If we're talking about breastfeeding for a newborn, what types of support might be really important for a family to be looking for? And then further in the conversation, we can look at how that might change throughout the course of the journey for a family.
Sure. So your first exposure to providers is going to be your OB. A lot of people, especially in Chicago, can start with their OB and find out what resources they recommend. A lot of families are getting their pediatrician recommendations from their OB provider. They can also reach out to friends. How did you get support with feeding your baby, whether it's breastfeeding, bottle feeding? We learn so much from each other that we miss in that community that we used to live in largely years ago. But we can bring that back together by asking our friends, our family, our providers, like, what resources should I be looking for after the baby's here? So not only are you looking for a pediatrician, but a lot of families now are looking for lactation support if they want to navigate breastfeeding.
That's a fantastic point. Yeah, I feel like we used to have the village, right? Years, decades, hundreds of years ago. Now we have to sort of find that village. And it's a great idea to find that village while you're still expecting, so that once you deliver, you have those pieces in place.
And with so much technology, we do live more in isolation. We're jumping on, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, blogs, trying to find those resources. But we truly still see the value in that hands-on support, that live person. Even through COVID, when we had to work with families through telehealth, we still found, gosh, we're missing that connection, that village, to get that hands-on help, because we do know the earlier support you get, even day one in the hospital, can really kind of start and direct your journey. So we're seeing that early support is really going to help moms have that. They're more likely to have that positive experience.
What is the best way to find that support in the beginning? And does that change as it goes on? So let's say you've met with a lactation consultant in the newborn phase and you find that you're struggling when baby's a little bit older. When should you reach back out to that lactation consultant?
So fast forward to baby's here. You should be getting some support in the hospital. And then from there, transition to, what does my support look like when I go home? So sometimes people are setting up those appointments before they've even left the hospital, which is really great. It's very proactive. Or 3, 4, 5 days after you deliver, you visit your pediatrician in their office for the first time. That's another opportunity. How's baby eating? What questions do you have, concerns? And if they do, a lot of times your pediatrician will recommend some lactation services, whether it's right there in their office. Some do provide in-office support, or they might recommend a clinic, a place that they can go, or in-home support, which is definitely becoming more popular, definitely with the insurance coverage. So from there, a lot of times in those early days, early weeks, we're helping you launch, right? We're helping you get comfortable, attach the baby comfortably to your breast. Is my baby eating well? How do I know my baby's eating well? Are they peeing and pooping? How do I navigate sore nipples, full breasts? Do I have enough milk, too much milk, right? All those questions we have in the beginning. So we're kind of launching. That's a lot of the first month, right? Newborns transition in that first month. They're kind of half asleep. We're cheerleading them through their feeds. And then through the second month, they're kind of more wakeful. They might have more of an opinion. There's cluster sessions. So I kind of consider the whole first 2 months one big growth spurt, right? We're a newborn through 8 weeks. That's a big launch period. So we might, if we meet with a family, we might be navigating with them, meeting with them once or twice through that first 2 months, lots of phone and email support, right? We're helping them kind of feel comfortable and getting to know their baby, right? You learn a lot through the lens of breastfeeding about newborn cues, their reflexes, their belly, things like that. After that, we kind of settle into whether we're breastfeeding, adding in bottles, pumping, it sort of becomes this settle in phase, right? So that's usually at about 2 months. If we want to throw in maternity leave, it just depends on how long it is and how much we get to kind of step into that phase, right? So maternity leave on average is anywhere between 2 and 4 months. If it's early, sometimes we're just kind of jumping right back into going back to work, right? So for some families, while we're helping them launch, we're helping them through phase 2 at the same time. Not ideal.
Yeah.
But if we think of 3 months as the average, they kind of get this extra month to navigate, okay, what does it look like if I'm gonna work from home? Do I have to leave? After 6 months, we have supplemental solids. Some babies are taking them at 6 months, some, not until 9. We kind of have that wiggle room of that supplemental foods. So some of that gives people a little bit of breathing room, meaning babies, when they're taking regular solid foods, their volume needs aren't as high. So for some moms, it feels like, okay, we're almost there, right? Because in that first year, all infants need either breast milk or donor milk or formula in that first year. After that first year, those aren't necessary for their nutritional needs. So we really thought of 1 year as sort of like this due date of if I can get there, right? So as babies get older and they fill more of those supplemental needs with solids, because that's really the direction they're going after the first year, that pressure, I think, kind of comes down a little bit, and that extended nursing journey feels a little bit more realistic for a lot of families.
I think that's an important thing to note, right? It's that extended nursing journey is not as intense as certainly the first few months, but even the remainder of the first year. I know one thing that might happen with some families, or some moms, I should say, or lactating people, is you might have the return of your menstrual cycle, and that might affect your milk supply. So there's all these things that can happen in that first year, and everything feels enormous when their sole source of nutrition or their primary source of nutrition is your milk. So there's a lot of that pressure. But I think if we're looking at these new AAP guidelines and they're saying breastfeeding until 2, I think there's been a little bit of pushback from some people that sounds unrealistic. But I can tell you that it doesn't need to be unrealistic, because the pressure is off at that point. It's supplemental to the solid foods that baby's eating, just like you said. So it's an additional source instead of the primary source. Sometimes after the first birthday, the most liberating part of lactation happens when you don't have to pump at work anymore, but you can still breastfeed at home. You don't have to pump anymore. You're just breastfeeding again, just like you were in the newborn days, except you know what you're doing. Your baby knows what they're doing. So I think if you can make it past that initial goal of the 1 year and get to the point where you get to just breastfeed on demand and you don't have to worry about pumping anymore, that to me has always been kind of my favorite part of the breastfeeding journey. It's like, okay, now I can sit back and relax and just whatever happens, happens.
I love those calls. I love those emails when they say, thank you for your help. We made it to a year. Now what do I do? Right? And I said, whatever they take is great. You don't have to meet certain volume requirements. Anything they get is great. So you're sort of navigating that relationship with a toddler now, right? So it might be less frequent or more frequent, depending on your relationship.
Or teething or anything else the toddler's going through.
Right. Sleep regressions, emotional growth, which is all of toddlerhood. But the pressure is off as far as the frequency, right? Did they get enough? But sometimes because they're active humans, it feels a little bit more pressure for that mom who has that extended journey, right? They might be wanting to stand up. They might be pulling. They might be distracted by somebody who walked into the room. And those things can happen with, your 6 to 12-month-year-old age group as well. But toddlers tend to be, want to navigate their surroundings, right? They're busy people.
We've acknowledged that this can be overwhelming for families in the newborn phase. We've acknowledged that this can be overwhelming even in the toddler phase. What do families need? How should they sort of try to get the support that they need? What can they do?
So I think families need help from the very beginning, even when they're thinking about, okay, who's my pediatrician? Who do I need for lactation support? Who's also going to be maybe making your meals, running errands for you. Sometimes we forget about those little things because I think, more and more women are very independent. Some might even say, I'm type A, I like to do everything myself, but we know as society evolves, biology has not, right? So newborns are going to be newborns, whether society evolves to more convenient ways of doing things. Newborns biology is not going to catch up to that, right? So I would say in a good way, it encourages you to slow down and hold still a little bit more, but also it makes us feel like we're not getting those other things done that we're used to doing ourselves. So I often encourage families to make a list of the things that you do that you need someone else to do for you while you're healing. Like, think of it as a temporary time, 6 to 8 weeks, if you can. Some people have doulas that come and support, family, friends, of course, their partners. Some have night support, just depends on what your needs are in your home. But if you make a list of your needs and someone asks you, how can I help? Or what can I do for you? Send them that list. And then sometimes it might even have dishes on it, right? It might be, I have a pickup at Target. You might have a friend who loves running to Target and they're excited to pick up your stuff at Target, right? But we always feel bad delegating. So it really takes that weight off of you feeling like you're telling people what to do. And also, we don't like to go around telling people what to do, right? So it really takes that weight off that people are not only helping you, but they're helping you with the things that you need help with, right? In history, we think we want to, I would say in the past, we would always make like meal trains and drop off meals and all these dinners. A lot of families are getting really good at like pre-making all these freezer meals, or they have all these meals they can't keep up with, but you also see them struggling to do their laundry or doing the dishes, or even like her water needs refilled, right? So all of these little things that we don't think of beyond feeding new families. Moms really, really need that support. And we see just a huge support in their transition, a more positive relationship with getting to know their babies, right? Because that's what you're doing. They're either sleeping or eating, right? So a lot of the things.
Or pooping.
Or pooping.
Yes.
Meaning like you're kind of going through, like, for lack of a better word, like a Groundhog's Day of feeding a baby, encouraging them. So a lot of that can be trialing when you're a little tired, maybe last night was long. So having somebody kind of even drop off coffee on your doorstep and walk away, right? Sometimes those little things can just make your day, right? Just those little things are what really matter in supporting that early launch, that early transition for new moms.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Washing the pump parts, making sure that mom stays hydrated, making sure that mom is eating. I feel like even if the meals are in the freezer or in the like actually bringing it to her can be really helpful, because she might be so worried about everyone else that she has forgotten to eat herself,
Yeah. I have seen partners and family members feeding moms while they feed their babies. I mean,
and then when you get good at it, you can actually feed your baby and yourself at the same time.
Exactly. Well, women are great multitaskers, so I don't know that we'll ever let that go. But just knowing that that's, having that extra support, we always see it as like, aren't I so lucky? Isn't this such a luxury? I can like have someone come over. But really, it comes back to our village, that we'll never not need our village in the beginning of life. And as my partner Judy would say, at the beginning of life and end of life, we need our people. And the beginning is so, so important. It just truly it doesn't matter how much milk you make, whether you want to breastfeed or bottle feed, or however you choose your journey, you need those people to help you launch in this transition. Because again, we're healing from having a new baby too.
Liz, thank you so much for joining us today. It was fantastic talking with you. If you're looking for a lactation consultant in the Chicago area, you can find Liz and her team at lactationpartners.com. And if you are interested in donor milk or you have enough milk to donate, please reach out. We're at milkbankwgl.org. Thanks again for talking today, Liz.
Thank you so much, Susan.